Peter Hall, British theatre director and founder of Royal Shakespeare Company, dies at 86. Peter Hall, who created the Royal Shakespeare Company at the age of 29, oversaw the National Theatre's move to the south bank of the Thames, and exerted a commanding influence on theatre in the English-speaking world for well over 50 years, died on Monday in London. He was 86. His death, at University College Hospital, was announced by the National Theatre, which gave pneumonia as the cause. Mr. Hall was long acknowledged as the leader and prime defender of a profession whose artistic health was often imperiled by financial cutbacks and political hostility in the second half of the 20th century. That the period was regarded as one of the theatre's greatest made his achievement all the more considerable. As a director, Mr. Hall introduced Samuel Beckett to English-speaking audiences, staged the premieres of 8 of Harold Pinter's plays, helped revolutionize the acting of Shakespeare, and, as artistic director of the Glyndebourne Festival in England from 1984 to 1990, brought a new realism to the performing of classic opera. He staged more than 300 plays at the National Theatre as its artistic director, from 1973 to 1988. He estimated that he had staged some 50 productions at opera houses around the world. In 1977 he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. When directing, Mr. Hall's concern was always for the rhythm of the language and the truth behind the words. He regarded himself as a musical director of plays. As he put it, you learn the notes, you learn the steps, you learn the shapes, and then one has to make it one's own and act it. Richard Eyre, his successor at the National, saw Mr. Hall's work as being true to the text, unostentatious, uncluttered, lucid, quite muscular and wonderfully accessible. He brought the same principles to opera, especially Mozart. Singers, encouraged to find the emotion in the music, responded with economical, truthful performances that acknowledged that the work as a whole was more important than personal display. Mr. Hall had his share of critical disasters, though they were far outnumbered by his triumphs. His staging of Verdi's Macbeth at the Metropolitan Opera in New York in 1982, with witches on broomsticks, was excoriated as over the top. More typical was the praise showered on his 1989 Broadway production of Tennessee Williams' Orpheus Descending. Frank Rich, writing in the New York Times, said Mr. Hall's staging had brought the action and language to the fever pitch of Gothic hallucination. On leaving the National in 1988, Mr. Hall created the Peter Hall Company, a commercial enterprise that at one time had no less than 5 of his productions running simultaneously in London. He also began spending more time in the United States. In 1999 he staged A Midsummer Night's Dream and Measure for Measure in repertory at the Ahmanson Theatre in Los Angeles, then brought his acclaimed revival of Peter Shaffer's Amadeus to Broadway. In 2000, in Denver, Mr. Hall and his son Edward co-directed a 10-hour adaptation of John Barton's Tantalus, an epic retelling of the Trojan War. And in 2005 Mr. Hall was hailed for his production of As You Like It at the Harvey Theatre of the Brooklyn Academy of Music. That was a doubly sweet triumph for Mr. Hall. He saw his daughter Rebecca receive standing ovations for her portrayal of Rosalind, the resourceful heroine of that Shakespeare comedy. Showing no signs of slowing down, Mr. Hall returned to BAM the following year with the Theatre Royal Bath production of Wilde's Importance of Being Earnest, starring Lynn Redgrave. Peter Reginald Frederick Hall was born into a working-class East Anglian family on November 22, 1930, in Bury St. Edmunds. His paternal grandfather had worked as a rat-catcher on Queen Victoria's Norfolk estate. Mr. Hall remembered his mother as hugely ambitious and in a state of permanent fury at his father, a railroad station master with a sunny, controlled temperament and no ambition at all. Both parents made financial sacrifices to give Peter, their only child, the education that they had never had. They were rewarded when he won a scholarship to the Perse, a distinguished grammar school in Cambridge. They encouraged me to be different and escape, Mr. Hall said in a 1993 interview, and from the age of 8 I was conscious I was different and would escape. He became an accomplished pianist and developed a passion for drama, especially Shakespeare, whose Macbeth struck him at age 11 as thrilling and blood-soaked and full of witches. By 14 he wanted to become a director.